Hello, my name is Ashley McCants and I'm an occupational therapy student, and today we're going to be talking about feeding and eating development in kids. Feel free to leave comments or questions down below on this video, and feel free to also check out the links and check out the baby feeding tracker that I also have down there. I'll also have my Canva link to kind of a short little handout on this topic. So we'll start off with this quote because I feel like it speaks so much to how important eating as a family or with your child is, because food tastes better when you eat it with your family. So we're going to talk about first the different skills of feeding. So first we have sensory, which is sense of taste and feeling in and around the mouth. So that is them feeling the food on their tongue, feeling it under their teeth, things like that. Oral motor, that's the mouth movement. So that's the chewing and eating, swallowing food and liquids, and then body strength. This is your child's ability to hold up their head and body to feed or eat. These are very important skills um, to prevent choking and to be able to eat bigger foods, harder foods, chunkier foods. So, development of these skills actually starts at the end of your pregnancy, which is super interesting, and it actually starts later on with um, sucking their thumb in the womb and things like that. But first, sensory. So babies can actually tell the difference between sweet flavors because breast milk actually has a sweet flavor to it. Oral motor, they have developed their reflexes for swallowing, biting, and moving their tongue. So at the beginning, it's a lot more just reflexes than them actually voluntarily eating, which are important to start with, but then also important to end up going away and eating voluntarily, which I'll talk about more. So at 2 weeks, babies actually can reject bitter flavors because it's associated with rotten or poisonous. So if they have something bitter that they don't like, or they have to take a medicine that tastes bitter, this little girl right here, how she's reacting, that's pretty accurate to how they'll kind of and spit it out. So yeah. 2 to 3 months. So sensory babies can reject some sour flavors. So if something tastes sour, they'll start to reject it. So if milk has gone bad, they'll actually can detect it. They also can detect differences in flavor, especially sweetness of something that's sweeter. So if they prefer sweeter flavors, they're going to prefer breast milk over formula sometimes or something like that. So for oral motor, baby will start to suck on their own rather than it just being a reflex. Body strength, they'll start to have steady head control, and baby can hold their own posture while eating. So less support is needed, so they'll kind of be able to flex themselves and hold themselves up a little bit more while they're eating. 4 to 6 months, so food can be introduced at about 4 to 6 months of age. Infants should still have formula or breast milk every day until they're at least 12 months old, so 1 year old. But they recommend about 6 months to start it, no earlier than 4 months, just because baby's stomach is just not ready to have solids yet before 4 months. So sensory wise, for 4 to 6 months, they'll have a preference for salty flavors. That'll start here. Oral motor, they'll be able to open mouth to spoon. So if you're going to spoon feed them, they'll actually be able to start opening their mouth. They'll also be able to move their tongue and swallow purees. So this will be a great time to introduce food at that 6 month mark. They'll also have more chewing motions when they're doing purees. That'll really help them learn to chew up. So you'll start seeing them kind of move their jaw up and down. Body strength, they'll start doing more mouthing to explore objects, and they're also able to reach for more items, and they'll reach for their bottle or spoon when they're hungry. So it's important to really pay attention to your child at this time where they're playing and to make sure they have a safe play space, because anything that they find or get their hands on, they will put in their mouths to explore it. So introducing food and drinks. So babies should only be fed breast milk and or formula until at least 4 months of age, like I talked about before, preferably 6 months of age. But every kid's different. They might be ready for solids at 5 months and start showing interest. So you decide when that's best for your baby. So 4 to 6 months, there'll be a supported sitter, so they can kind of sit up a little bit on their own. They might lean forward on their hands, like I've talked about in previous videos in development at this stage. And that this time they can have infant cereal, smooth puree foods, and make sure you're only picking one ingredient foods like carrot, sweet potato, apple, squash, and pears. This is because you want to be able to see if your baby is possibly allergic to one of those foods or has a reaction to one of those foods. So feeding them one food for 3 to 5 days just to see how that goes. And then you can try introducing a new food. So you could do sweet potato for 3 days. Baby loves it. It goes great. No reaction. Then you can try apples. And then also for the infant cereal, they recommend that you try different grains. So doing barley and rice and all of those and kind of mixing those up. Pre-chewing food. So this is when a parent or caretaker will chew up food and then feed it to the baby. It's practiced and used in many cultures, and it was very commonly used in the United States up until about the 1950s. Many parents and caretakers now either use purees or will use a fork to mash the food. They'll also use a food processor to really grind it up or a blender. However, there is a risk that the chewer can pass an illness and infectious diseases to the baby by chewing food. So if you decide to pre-chew food, make sure the chewer has no sores, cuts, or anything in their mouths, and then also isn't carrying an infectious disease. And make sure the chewer is not sick, as this can easily get the infant sick as well. So now we're on to 6 to 7 months. So body strength. They're able to sit up independently for more than 3 to 5 seconds. They also have a stable head, so their head isn't bobbing when they're up and around. It's really nice and straight and stable. They'll also be able to hold the bottle with their hands, and I talk about more about this in my self-help video as well, so feel free to check that out. They'll also be able to move a toy from one hand to the other. So that's a great indicator that they're ready if they're sitting up and doing these things that they can actually start feeding solids. 7 to 8 months, oral motor. So they're able to actually bring their upper lip down to draw it off the spoon. So they'll start to be able to fully close their lips. And this is important for obviously eating off the spoon. You'll notice in the beginning that with this picture over here, this mom is really pressing that spoon up against that baby's top lip to really try to get him to close down. So it's a great way to practice. Another thing during this time that's important to remember with feeding is if your child does have a messy face, don't immediately wipe it off when they get a messy face. So if they get something on here, but they're still eating, let them finish eating and then wipe off their face. It's really good for sensing around their face so they can feel like, oh, I had some yogurt on my cheek or something like that. So that's a good learn thing. And also wiping off their face too much can actually make them sensitive to having things on their face. And then they won't want to get their faces dirty and will have trouble washing them as well. They'll also start moving their tongue from side to side, so they can reach into the pockets of their cheeks and really pull it out. If they get food stuck there, they're also able to move their jaw in more of a chewing motion. And so instead of just the up down, they can actually chew it and kind of start getting that little rotation in there for chewing. Food and drink for 7 to 10 months. Babies should be fed breast milk still and formula up till 12 months of age or at least a year. Even beyond that, you can go for breast milk as well. I've seen parents go for 2 years, and whatever is good for, or whatever is right for you and your baby is your choice. So whatever goes there, but at least 12 months of age. 7 to 9 months, this is an independent sitter. You'll see this labeled on some of the baby food packets, especially from Gerber, where it'll say independent sitter. That means this 7 to 9, 7 to 10 month range. They may start drinking small amounts of breast milk and formula and purees out of an open cup, so you can get a little tiny cup. And I have more about that on my self-help video with feeding skills. Also, they can start doing infant cereal just like before. Make sure you're mixing up those types. So if you do barley, then do rice the next week, and kind of go back and forth between those. They can also still do smooth pureed foods. You can start doing yogurt with them because it's a little bit of a different texture. You can also do soft foods like smashed potatoes, and then soft finger foods. So like mashed hard-boiled eggs, small pieces of a ripe banana, soft bread, soft cooked carrots, and then small pieces of pasteurized cheese. So you can see over here, this is a great picture of what that mashed egg is going to look like and what they're going to do to kind of feed themselves. 8 to 10 months, oral motor. They're able to try more textures. So small bumps, fork mashed, thickened purees. So these are those different types of textures here. These are more so the purees. And you can kind of see one's kind of more of like a soup, one's more of kind of like a guacamole texture. So you can really get, especially if your kid is doing well with the purees, you can start doing fork smashed and stuff with small bumps in it. They can also start eating break off pieces of meltable food. So you might have to crack them in half, like the little puffs and the yogurt melts over here. But they can do those things. They can also start chewing softer food. So really soft cooked vegetables or things like that. Anything that's really soft, kind of similar to the meltable things over here, they can start eating those as well. 8 to 10 months, body strength. So they're able to move from sitting to lying. They're able to turn their trunk. You can see this kiddo here is turning their trunk kind of open so they have room to hold their cup. They're also, this is a great time to introduce drinking from the cup with the parent holding it. I kind of talked about this in the previous one where you could start that before. This is the perfect place to start this as well. We really want to start with just an open cup. I know that there's going to be some spilling, but this is a great time to just do some water, do some breast milk, a little, you just need a little bit amount. You can even do pureed meats and pureed foods in there, and you just give baby a chance. You help them get it into their hands and work on drinking. They're going to be mostly drinking with two hands right now. I would really try to avoid sippy cups. If you do need to give your child a sippy cup because spilling is an issue, I would just give them as minimal as possible and do not give them to a kid under the age of 2. Obviously, if they're going to daycare and they say they need a water bottle, you can do this little water bottle over here. It's just that at home, really try to do this open cup because they can actually learn how to not spill and they can be perfectly great with an open cup. And I do talk more about this in my self-help video as well. 10 to 12 months, oral motor, so they're able to actually lick foods off their lips, like this baby down here. They're able to stick their tongue out a little bit too. And this baby's a bit younger, but that's kind of a good little, they'll really be able to do that. They'll also be able to bite better without big movements. So instead of really having to move their jaw up and down, they actually have a more efficient bite. And they're also able to transfer food from one side of their mouth to the other side of their mouth, which will be important for really chewing. 10 to 12 months, body strength. So independently sits in a variety of positions. You can see the kiddo over here sitting holding toys with their feet straight out. Some might have their feet kind of crossed, things like that. They're also starting to pinch with their pointer finger and thumb. As you can see in this upper picture here, she's pinching with those pointer finger and thumb to pick up the Cheerios. They'll also start to use their fingers to self-feed. So that's when the pinching will be okay. So they might, instead of just raking and kind of picking up all at once with all their fingers, they might be able to actually pinch and pick up little food now. So food and drinks for 10 to 12 months old. Babies should still be fed breast milk until they're at least 12 months of age, like we talked about before. Make sure all food is small enough for baby to pick up and eat, because this will be when they're really starting to use those fingers to pick up and eat. This is a great time to introduce couscous, rice, quinoa, and then other finger foods such as scrambled egg yolks, beans, ground meat, sliced deli meat. Make sure it's cut up nice and small for them. Strips of cheese, bread, toast, cracker, muffins, cooked pasta. So make sure you give your child a variety of those things. So try to do a grain, a protein, which this is chicken over here, and then you can do rice. And then this one over here is bread, a protein, which is beef, and then vegetables. So really try to have that kind of even out. Don't try to give your child a giant piece of toast and then that's the only thing they're going to eat. Give them nice small portions of each different food group, and that will help them get used to, oh, it's not just one thing that I eat for my whole meal. It's a little bit of bread, a little bit of veggies, a little bit of protein. 12 to 14 months, body strength. They'll be able to take bites on their own and some bites from a parent. So they'll be able to kind of pick up with a spoon because they'll be able to grasp it with one hand and take a bite with it. They'll also be able to hold and tip the bottle on their own if they need to completely. They'll also be able to hold cups up with two hands. This is that part where that practicing with them and you kind of holding the bottom and getting them to do the motion. This will really come important here because this is when we want them to start being able to hold the cup with two hands. Oral motor, they'll be able to chew and swallow firmer foods. So this is a great example of these foods over here. I also had this in my food handout with the breakdown of the ages as well. So they'll be able to chew and swallow firmer foods without choking. They'll be able to chew foods that have juices. So we're talking oranges, grapes, other juicy kind of fruits or Watermelon is another juicy one too. They'll also be able to keep most food in their mouth while they're chewing. So in the beginning, you might notice that when they're chewing, most of it's getting on their face. That's because the baby is really learning to use their tongue, to use their mouth, and then try to keep food in. So this is when they'll actually be able to keep most of their food in and have more minimal mess, but they'll still have some mess. So food and drinks for 12-month-old or older. Babies should still be fed breast milk till 12 months of age. You can even go beyond that. For breast milk, it just depends on what your choice is and what your doctor says and what you decide as a parent. But make sure all food is small enough for baby to pick up and eat. This is the independent walker stage, so they should be walking by themselves. Milk, you can start with the approval of your baby's parent. You could do fruit cut into small cubes or strips. So like this little orange over here. You can do bite-sized soft cooked vegetables like zucchini or broccoli. So you can do those soft cooked. This one, I know there's for sure zucchini and then some peppers in there. So that soft cook is really good for them. They also have some potatoes here that are as well as soft cook, and then some shredded chicken over here. You can do mixed food textures now too. So this is when you can start that macaroni and cheese, casserole, and pasta dishes. Just make sure those pieces are small enough for your child to eat. So if it's a big piece of ravioli, make sure you're cutting it into a small enough piece that not only your baby could pick up, but that they can swallow nicely, because that can be a choking hazard. You can also do shredded meats or tofu. So like I showed over here, this is that shredded meat. Low sugar cereal, you could start that. So Cheerios are a big one at this point for most kiddos. Just try to keep it limited to more low sugar cereals, and then also soft fish. So for 14 to 16 months, body strength, we're looking at they're able to finger feed really good, so they can really eat a whole meal using the finger feeding. They'll also start practice eating with utensils. So this is a great time to introduce utensils and help out your child with those if you haven't already. Um, this is the time to practice with the spoon and the fork and using those things. So just having them and letting your child explore. Also make sure you're giving your child time to eat their food. So if you're giving them only like 10 minutes and that's not enough for them to practice using their utensils, try to find time to give them more time to play and figure out how to use those utensils, because that's how they learn best. Oral motor, they'll be able to chew bigger pieces of soft food. They'll work on chewing foods with increasing hardness. They'll also use their tongue to move pieces of food in the mouth to chew and swallow. So that's when it'll be not only can they chew it, but now they can actually swallow it as well with the bigger pieces. 18 to 24 months, they'll be able to pick up, dip, and bring foods to mouth. They'll also be able to use spoons and forks more often now. They'll be able to scoop purees and bring them to their mouth like this kiddo is doing here. They'll also be able to eat faster and chewing strength gets better. So make sure you're giving them that time still to eat their meal and sit down as a family and eat. 24 to 36 months, they'll use fingers to fill the spoon. They'll have increasing fork skills. They'll also open cup drink without spilling. So if you've been practicing, this is when it'll kind of come into play. They'll also have one-handed cup holding, and they will chew with their lips closed for the oral motor skills, and they will work on chewing bigger and harder table food. So this brings us to the end of our presentation. So feel free to email me any questions you have. I will be doing another video on food safety and then also how to track food for your infant. I have a special sheet for tracking that I'll also link below. So feel free to check those out. Bye.